မိမိတို့ Prime Media အဖွဲ့ရဲ့ယခုတင်ပြမဲ့အစီအစဉ်ကလေးကတော့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာအထူးသဖြင့်နေပြည်တော်မှာတည်ထောင်ထားတဲ့ International Leadership University ရဲ့ဘမောက္ခတာဝန်ထမ်းဆောင်နေတဲ့ဒေါက်တာ Richard Dell နဲ့တွေ့ဆုံမေးမြန်းထားတဲ့အစီအစဉ်လေးပဲဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ဒေါက်တာ Richard Dell ဟာမြန်မာနိုင်ငံနေပြည်တော်မှာ International Leadership University ကိုတည်ထောင်ဖွင့်လှစ်ထားပြီးမြန်မာကလေးသူငယ်များမျိုးဆက်သစ်လူငယ်များကိုအသိပညာများပေးလျက်ရှိပါတယ်။ကျောင်းစာများသာမဟုတ်ဘဲလူမှုကျင့်ဝတ်များစီကံလိုက်နာမှုများအတွေးမြင်စာပွားမှုများတွေးခေါ်ဆင်ခြင်နိုင်မှုများကိုအထူးလေးထားသင်ကြားပေးလျက်ရှိပါတယ်။မျိုးဆက်သစ်လူငယ်များရဲ့ဆွမ်းဆောင်ရည်များအရေးအသွေးများကိုနီလန်ပေါင်းစုံနဲ့မြင့်တင်ပေးနေတဲ့ကျောင်းတော်ကြီးတစ်ခုလည်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ပမောက္ခချုပ်ဒေါက်တာ Richard Dell ဟာဗုဒ္ဓဘာသာသက်ဝင်ယုံကြည်သူတူဖြစ်ပြီးမြန်မာလူမျိုးများကိုချစ်ခင်ကဓလေ့ထုံးတမ်းယဉ်ကျေးမှုများကိုလည်းအစဉ်လေးလာရရှိနေသူတူဖြစ်ပါတယ်။မြန်မာလူပေါင်းဖွဲ့စည်းမှလိုအပ်နေတဲ့ကွက်လက်များကိုလည်းတတ်ဆွမ်းသူ၍လက်လန်းမီသူ၍ဖြည့်ဆည်းပေးနေသူတူဖြစ်ကြောင်းလည်းလေးလာတွေ့ရှိရပါတယ်။မြန်မာနိုင်ငံအနှံ့ပြားမှရှိတဲ့မြို့ရွာများသို့ရောက်ရှိနေတဲ့အချိန်မှာမြန်မာပြည်သူများရဲ့နေဆာဒူဝ daily life မှာလှုပ်ရှားပြုမှုဆောင်ရွက်နေကြတဲ့ဘဝရှင်သန်ရုန်းကန်ရေးစာဝတ်နေရေးသမွေဝမ်းကြောင်းလုပ်ငန်းရပ်များယဉ်ကျေးမှုဓလေ့ထုံးတမ်းများကိုလည်းအထူးအလေးထားလေးလာစီးပူးနေသူထူးဖြစ်ကြောင်းတွေ့ရှိရပါတယ်။ကျေးလက်ဒေသမှာရှိတဲ့ကျေးရွာတရွာမှာတစ်သားအိမ်ဆောက်လုပ်ပြီးမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာထွက်ရှိတဲ့သင်များဖြင့်တည်ဆောက်ထားတဲ့နေအိမ်မှာနေထိုင်သူတူဖြစ်ပါတယ်။မြန်မာရိုးရာအစားအစာများတိုင်းရင်းသားပေါင်းစုံရဲ့ဓလေ့ထုံးတမ်းများကမ္ဘာပေါ်မှာတမူထူးခြားလှတဲ့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့ထူးခြားချက်များကိုစမ်းသစ်မှုများကိုအထူးလေးလာနေသူတူဖြစ်ကြောင်းလည်းသိရှိရပါတယ်။နိုင်ငံသားတဦးကမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာရှိတဲ့အဖိုးမဖြတ်နိုင်တဲ့စာပေယဉ်ကျေးမှုဓလေ့ထုံးတမ်းစတဲ့အကြောင်းအရာများကိုတမိုးထလေးလာစီဘူးထိမ့်သိမ့်နေတဲ့အချိန်မှာမိမိတို့နိုင်ငံအတွင်းမှာနေထိုင်ကြတဲ့နိုင်ငံသူနိုင်ငံသားများကရောလေးလာဆောင်ထိန်သိမ့်ရန်တာဝန်မရှိပါလောဆိုတဲ့မိကုန်းကိုကျွန်တော်တို့လက်ရှိမြန်မာနိုင်ငံသူနိုင်ငံသားများဖြေကြားရမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ပြည်ထောင်စုသမ္မတမြန်မာနိုင်ငံတော်ကြီးအတွင်းမှာတည်ရှိတဲ့အဖို့မဖြတ်နိုင်တဲ့ Drastic Dramatic ယဉ်ကျေးမှုအမွေအနှစ်များအစဉ်အလာများဓလေ့ထုံးတမ်းများယဉ်ကျေးဖော်ရွှေမှုများလူသားဖြူစင်မှုများကိုဆက်လက်ဆောင်ထိန်ကြရန်လည်းလိုအပ်ပါကြောင်းတွေးဆပွားနိုင်ရန်တင်ဆက်လိုက်ရပါတယ်။
Morning, Professor. We are from Prime Media, and thank you for being with us and our team. Professor Richard Dell, you are also a rector and founder of the International Leadership University. I have known that you love Myanmar tradition and cultural heritage. You are also promoting the idea and capacity of our Myanmar young people. Very sincere appreciation to you. I wish to express my appreciation.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, please let me know your inspiration for establishment of International Leadership University, sir.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you for coming too. It's a pleasure to meet Prime Media, and always happy to talk about education in Myanmar if we get the chance, because I think it's a really important thing. I'm getting old. I'm 60 now, and I had really originally come to Myanmar to meditate as a temporary monk in Yangon, with no plan to stay here. This is, I guess, 11 or 12 years ago. But one of the things that struck me, besides how beautiful the country is and how interesting the culture is, was how well preserved the culture was for good reasons and bad reasons, right? For various reasons, we've been, semi-isolated, you could say. But that meant that we had our own language that was still intact, and our own writing system, and our own versions of religions, our own versions of Theravada Buddhism or Christianity or Islam, what have you. We had our own foods. We have our own fashion sense. We have our own cosmetics. We have our own kind of music. We have all these things that were really kind of pure and interesting and good. And what struck me was that we were not really seeing the value, perhaps, of some of those things. We're focused on the disagreements that we have, which is understandable and need to be resolved. But we were missing that we have one of the great treasures in the world. And that's not just Bagan, and that's not just Mandalay and all the beautiful places, but it's really the whole collection of culture. And I say that not for a soft, fuzzy reason. I say that because culture is ultimately what drives people to become who they are. And yet we tend to make our money, so to speak, off of natural resources, right? Off of coal or oil or gas or jade or teak or diamonds or gold or what have you, rubies and such. The problem with that, as everybody I think knows, as any educated person knows, is that eventually those natural resources are going to run out. We're not going to have any more. At some point, we're going to suck the straw and the last bit of oil is going to come up. And then it's over. And the party's over. And we will have a terrible problem at that time. So what I started to think was, what if we could begin to really build on the culture? What if we imagined a world, as crazy as it sounds, but where little kids in Seoul, Korea are wearing Thanaka because it's cool. And where Myanmar fashion is walking the runways in Milan and Paris and New York, and where Myanmar food restaurants like Thai restaurants are all over the world. Right? People all over the world, they Google Thailand, and what do you see? Oh, the food is incredible, it's Buddhist, the people are beautiful, land of smiles and so forth. Nobody looks at, in great detail at that they also struggle, as every country does, right? Because they built on that culture. I imagine, what if we had a world where, little kids are dancing to M-pop in San Francisco, and where, old women in China are watching M-drama at night rather than Chinese or K-drama. And as crazy as that sounds, I think it's a realistic possibility if we really begin to dig into our culture and begin to say, why is this Taibo look this way? What does this mean, this particular thing? Where did it come from? And what else can I do with it? Maybe, for example, men around the world will never wear longis. I accept that, that's fine. But they might wear jackets with this same materials. They might take the kaya stripes or the kachin checks or, the mon, the red one, right? And they might have handbags with it and jackets with it and pants and trousers and shoes and so forth. And they might really learn something about what it means to be Myanmar, what it means to be fast and powerful, strong, keep fighting. Because irrespective of all the mistakes we may have made over the last 70 or 80 years, we are pretty resilient. And at the end of the day, I think people love each other more than they hate each other, and there's more that binds us and connects us than drives us apart. Right now, it doesn't feel that way, but I think that's the truth. So it seemed at the time that maybe it made sense to go into education. And frankly, I just want to retire and meditate and do nothing because I'm lazy. But what we kind of saw was this sort of an issue. We have a lot of universities, mostly government universities, and they're fine. They do what they do, which is basic sciences and making sure that people keep up to standards and developing government staffs and all. The same as government universities do in countries all over the world, and that's a great thing. But what seemed to be missing were true universities in the private sector. Because if you look at most countries, whether you're in Washington, D.C. or Paris, France, or Bangkok, Thailand, or even Moscow, there's an sort of an ecosystem of government or public universities and private universities that work together. And the one side is trying to build the basic knowledge, right, and keep it going. And the private side is trying to figure out, how do we apply this to society now? How do we commercialize it? So as an example, if you go to the United States, University of California, particularly Berkeley, among other places, created ARPANET, which became the internet. Created it mostly for the U.S. Army, right? But they created this really wonderful way of sharing information electronically. And what's great about the internet is not what people think. What's great about it is if you wanted to, once you send that information out and it's really being hosted all over the world, right, in the cloud, as we say nowadays, if somebody wants to shut off the internet, can they shut it off? No. You can bomb this city, but the traffic will just reroute. You can kill everybody there and it'll traffic. So all of a sudden, it created a kind of robustness to information. And this was the public universities that created this architecture, that created this kind of new technology. The problem was, how do you make money with it? So if you moved about 20 miles away from that, there was Stanford University. And out of Stanford came this different ecosystem that developed, Oracle for databases, and Facebook, and Macromedia, and Adobe, and WhatsApp, and LinkedIn, and and on and on and on, Instagram, and you name it. And they'd found a way then to get that, for good and bad, right? Sometimes our technology has improved faster than our ethics have improved to figure out how to use it. We're still figuring that out, but they worked together. And these private universities commercialized a lot of new technologies, and they pay royalties back to these government universities. So we kind of had this idea, what if we tried that in Myanmar? For whatever reasons, Naypyidaw is the capital. That's where a lot of the decisions are going to be made. And there's a lot of important cities in the country, but we thought, well, commercially it would make more sense to open in Yangon, right? And it's more people, easier to make money. But we thought, really, this might be where decisions are being made. Decisions people like, decisions that people hate, but that's where these important decisions are made. So we should start to look at a traditional idea. Now, call it whatever you want, university, college, school, institute, I don't care. Whatever we're allowed to call it, we'll call it. But really, we look at the word university comes from the root word of universe, right? Meaning everything. So we try to look at everything. We try to say, well, how do we create new teaching systems? So we start BEd programs and MEd programs. How do we create better economic systems? So we create Bachelor of Business Administration and MBAs. How do we manage public policy? How do you make decisions about all the land disputes and challenges that go on in any society, right? So we start MPA programs and various bespoke trainings for that. What do we do about public health? We have a relatively short lifespan in our country, in comparison to our colleagues in ASEAN, right? We're the shortest. So how do we really now, the government has wonderful MPH programs, and they focus on epidemiology and pharmacology and research and all the things that they need to focus, which is exactly, we think, perfect. Our question is to focus more on, how do you develop a clinic? How do you fund it? How do you market it? How do you get people so that we can try to take some of the really wonderful things we're learning in the public domain, in the government, and add those into people's lives, so that we're not getting dengue fever, so we're not being bitten by mosquitoes, so that we're not, right, so that we don't have flies on on our food when we eat. And so we began to, develop those sorts of programs, and the idea is just to say, what can we do that can make our country as strong as possible, that can give people something to unite about, that can teach people to think really critically. And that's kind of a word people throw around all the time, but what I mean by critical thinking is to look at data, to look at evidence, to find evidence, and then make decisions and follow sort of very clear algorithms about how to make those decisions. And then to evaluate, monitor, are they working, are they not, should we change it, do we have to go, because we're going to make a million mistakes along the way. At the university, we make mistakes every day. I make more mistakes than anybody. But we're trying to figure out, also looking at the way that we teach. Because if you think about in general, and this is not only Myanmar, this is all over the world, particularly in countries that have been colonized at some point, right? Whether it was by the British or by the Spanish or by the Portuguese or by the French or whoever, Japanese, whatever. Often their education systems were primarily established or reinforced by the colonial masters. And when you think about it, if you or I were colonizing somebody, please don't do it, it's a terrible idea, but if we were, right, what do we really want to teach the people? What do we really want them? Well, we want to teach them to be obedient. Right? We want them to be obedient slaves, obedient servants, so we can steal everything from them, right? So we can take all the rubies and and take the rice and sell it somewhere else and so forth, and take them from being the wealthiest country in this region to the poorest country in this region. So what happens is sometimes when those colonial powers leave, the same institutions keep following that a similar track, a similar sort of, well, I'm the professor, you need to, I will lecture to you, you will memorize what I say. Nothing wrong with lecturing, nothing wrong with memorizing. We all have to do it. But we also need to teach people to think, because people are dealing with a lot more than they dealt with before. Right? When you and I went to school, we didn't have calculators, we didn't have laptop computers, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have the internet, right? And those can be wonderful tools, just like AI right now, right? In the last couple of years, we've had AI. Could be a wonderful boon for humanity, could lift us up, could make us smarter, help us achieve our goals more quickly. Or it might make us stupider.
Yeah.
We might just, write my essay for me, do my work for me, and now I'm not even cognating, I'm not even thinking. When we talk about something like that, it's not just an AI problem. If we go way back in history, Plato, the Greek philosopher Plato, complained that there were books. Right? He said, oh my God, these books! All these kids, they're reading books all day. The books are going to destroy their minds. Well, it turned out that books didn't destroy our minds. It just helped us to, perpetuate culture in a new way. Same thing with radio, same thing with television, same thing with the internet, same thing with social media now, same thing with AI and gaming and so forth. The challenge is that we don't want our students in Myanmar to become a slave to that technology. And I mean slave in a very particular way. I mean it in the way Nietzsche talks about the slave mentality, right? That slaves are people who complain about their life, dukkha, how much suffering, but never really do anything to change it, right? They're always saying what the other guy's doing wrong, but not taking care. And that's why we started at ILU with this sort of tagline, or motto, I guess you could say, that was two really short sentences. The first was improve your life, and the second is improve your country.
Good.
And we meant that really literally, and we meant that in that order. What our thought was don't go out and try to change the country. First, get your own house in order. Figure out your own, get to where you're financially secure, be able to take care of your parents, be able to take care of your kids. Create peace in your neighborhood, in your village, in your township, in your city, in your state, in your, our division, in your and then secondarily, once you figured out as much as you can about your life and you have a little extra, now you really need to start to build up our country. Right, to build it really stronger, and so that it becomes something that we're all proud about, because it's a part of our shared culture. Right, but what we had seen was that sometimes in some other countries, for example, young people get very excited and they want to, I want to protest, I want to change, I want to change the country first. I want to save the other people first. What we're saying is that even our lives are at risk, each person. So we really want you to get healthy. We want you to start to think clearly. We want you to, think critically with evidence, make wiser decisions as much as you can. And one of the areas that you can find that in, not the only area, but one of the areas is in traditional cultures. Because whatever lasts a long time must have lasted, right? So for example, when I built my house in the village, my wife and I went around for 1 year and we photographed houses and villages all over Myanmar. We visited every state and every division and said, okay, I like a Mulang Nai style roof, but I like a Mandalay interior, but I want Naypyidaw dimensions, blah, blah, blah. And we built it out of old recycled houses that
I've
were
been
falling
there.
down and so forth. Well, here's what happened. When there's a flood, it's fine. Because we took into account, which direction the houses that stand the longest stay, where are the rivers. So when there was an earthquake, fine, because wood is very flexible. It's not like brick and mortar, right? So there's a value in looking at things. It doesn't mean we need to be bound by them. We don't have to stick in them. But there's a value in saying, hey, these certain religious ideas or these certain philosophic ideas or these certain, whatever, even today, the fashion show or what have you, there's certain ideas that we should try to learn from. And maybe we can build on those. And maybe we can do similar to what Japan did, where we start to develop our own anime and our own games that are based on our stories and our history and our mythologies and so forth. And we start to develop our own fashion sense that can export around the world. I'm not saying it'd be precisely the same, but that would be inspired by some of the ideas that we've had before and some of the materials we have now and so forth. So that's kind of what the university was doing, was, you could say in a sense, saying let's decolonize education. And let's start to develop a hand-in-hand where, we're not taking a political perspective. We're saying we care about the people, we care about the culture. Most of us are here, we're stuck here, we aren't going anywhere or can't go anywhere. So let's really try and show metta, let's try and show love to each other. And the best way we can do that with the young folks is not to over-idealize and say, you just want to get out of here, but to say, look, it is rough. It's tough. You know, life isn't easy, and that's one of the many, the very first things that Buddha taught us, right? You know, and the Four Noble Truths is, it's a real mess out there, and it's going to be very difficult. But we can train our mind. We can, not to overthink things, not to over-emotionalize things, but to try our best to find better and better solutions.
Okay.
And part of that is by connecting into the past, whether it's Greek philosophers or Myanmar philosophers and poetry and blah 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 blah. And part of that is looking into the future and saying what's happening in cybersecurity, what's happening in the sort of repositioning of things globally, right? In a sort of multipolar new world. How shall we fit into that as a traditionally kind of non-aligned country? What can we do that will make the most people happy, make sure the most people are healthy, most people are safe, most people are not subject to any kind of violence. That's what universities try to do, and that's we're doing our best.
Okay.
ပမောက္ခဒေါက်တာရစ်ချတ်ဒဲပြောကြားတဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့နိုင်ငံဆိုတာကတော့ပြည်ထောင်စုသမ္မတမြန်မာနိုင်ငံတော်ကိုဆိုလိုရင်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်